Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started, and I'm going to jump right in to today's training. Hello and welcome everybody to today's training. This is the first in a four-part series called Time Management from Scratch, and we're going to really strip down to some basic elements to make sure that you have all the right parts. We're going to look at three core parts today of what I call a no-fail time management plan. And we're going to look at how those have to connect together. Some people have all the parts, but they're not connected together, and they can't figure out why they're not moving forward. Some people are missing pieces, and they don't even know it. Hopefully, we're going to find the gaps for you today, because if you are missing these or they're not lined up together properly, what happens is you wind up overly busy on priorities that don't matter to you. You wind up running reactively through the whole day, and you get to the end of the day and you're like, man, I did all kinds of stuff, but I don't know what in the world I have to show for it. And that is exasperating to do that. You live in what I call deferred joy, because the things you really want to be doing, like spending time with your kids or getting some exercise in or taking a weekend off to go away, those things just keep getting put back and put back and put back on the back burner, and you never realize them. And it's demoralizing. And I know a lot of you, we have shared with you the concept of a choke point, where we go into the day and it is like a funnel, and we have our expectations of what's going to happen, but then many other things start crowding in, and before you know it, what we had in mind gets choked out, and very few things make it to the end of the day that we had hoped for. And when we hit that choke point where too much comes crashing in on us, it can literally render you helpless, where you just sit down. I've had people say in calls and webinars we've done, I just find myself sitting down on the couch, unable to do nothing. That's no way to live. And I've been there. I get that, and I have a passion about this training because I have been through some places where my priorities got completely out of sync with the way I wanted to be living. My time management was awful, and I paid for it dearly. And I'll start with one quick story about that and see if it resonates with any of you out there. Many of you know part of my story, and that is that years ago, when I was a young pastor, fairly new to ministry, I had two young children, Matt and Ruth. And when I say young, infant and preschool age. I was in a small town, involved in anything that I could get my hands on. I was in Kiwanis. I started a huge Christian music festival that filled our fairgrounds. It was a crazy over-the-top undertaking. While I was working as a pastor, while I was trying to be a spouse, while I was volunteering for Habitat for Humanity, while I was serving on civic boards, it was insane. I was burning my candle at both ends in the middle, and it all came crashing down on me one evening when, late at night, I'm coming home, and I stopped by the church thinking that I'm sure that I needed to pick something up to work on at home, that it was important. And I've got Ruth with me at the time, my little girl, and I have a picture over here on my desk. I'll give you a peek at Ruth there. This is her about the time that I'm telling you this story. A little bigger than a toddler, and I'm standing at the back door of the church, fumbling in the dark with keys in one hand while I hold her little hand in my other. And as I do that, she looks up at me, and I hear her say, "Daddy, do you live here?" And everything in me it crushed my soul. That my daughter wondered if I lived at the church. And I knew that my priorities didn't exist, that they were completely, utterly askew of what they needed to be. And I made some pretty radical adjustments. I actually cut back to part-time for a while, and I recognized that I thought I was bad at saying no what I realized is that I was really good at saying no, but I was saying no to my family. I was saying no to sleep. I was saying no to my health. I was saying no to things that should have mattered most to me. And it had what could have been cataclysmic consequences if I hadn't had that moment and done an about face and changed how I was living my life. What I have discovered since that time is that there are really just three very core elements of time management that must be in place. These are non-negotiable. That's why I use the word critical. I put core, but I also sometimes say critical elements. They must be in place. If one of these is missing, your whole structure will not work right. If you get all three working together, really cool, amazing, wonderful things can happen. And I'm going to give you an example of that right now to teach you about these three core elements. Now, as I'm doing that, though, here's what I want to ask you. I want you to think about, what would you do if time was not an obstacle for you? What would you do? If you could wave a magic wand and you were able to manage your time well, and you could actually make time for things that matter most to you, what would you do if time wasn't an obstacle? Because during the course of this, we're going to help break that obstacle down for you, get it small enough to where you can bypass it or try to completely remove it out of the road for you. So be thinking about it. It's a critical question. I'll start with one of my dreams. There was a period in my life, if you'd asked me, what would you do if time wasn't an obstacle? I would have said, I want to be in a theater production. Okay. I had a dream for years of taking the stage in my life. That was something that I thought would be the coolest thing to do. And I was overly busy and I felt that I never had time. How could I ever have time for the rehearsals? How could I make sure that I had time for the performances? Oh my goodness, I'm 40-something years old. I've never been in theater. Who am I to think that I can do acting? All of those things were swirling in my head. And I lived in Hot Springs at the time. They had this wonderful small community theater. And every time a play would come around, I would go to it. And I would walk out of there saying, I wish I had auditioned for that. Well, we moved from Hot Springs to Texarkana. And when we moved, I said, you know what? Before I get involved in anything else, I am going to make being in a play I bet you can guess the word that I'm going to say. I'm going to make it a priority. Let me write this down here real quickly. I'm going to make this priority. I'm going to commit to auditioning for a play, finding a theater group before, critical word there, before I do anything else. Sometimes people mentally think they've made something a priority. It is not a priority until you actually put your action around it before other things. It's a great intention, but it's not a priority if you're not placing action you take in your lives before it over other things. Did everybody catch that? So I committed to it as a priority. And that's the first gear in this whole thing. You have to be clear on your purpose. You have to be clear on your priorities. As long as you're not, you're going to be living to somebody else's priorities, somebody else's purpose. And that lifestyle will make you resentful. It will make you angry. It will make you weary. We have bottomless energy for the things we love to do. It is life depleting for us to be engaged in things that we do not love to do. So you have to get crystal clear. And for me, it was, I want to be at all costs in a play. So we moved. I found a theater group almost immediately. Within a month of being there, I attended a play, and I'm like, I'm going to audition for the next show. Well, lo and behold, 2-3 months later, I found out they were holding auditions for Annie. And I'm like, I don't know a whole lot about Annie, but it's a play. I'm going to get in it. Now, it was a youth theater. I was 40 something years old, but I thought, you know what? They need some adult roles in this, so I'm going to go for it. I had no acting experience. I didn't even know what they did in an audition. So the first thing I did was, once I had my priority clear, I set a goal, and my goal actually was not just to be in a show, but I had a goal of being the lead in a show eventually. So I tend to do things epically. I wanted to be a lead. Now, I knew that I probably wasn't going to get a lead my first time out, but I had to start somewhere. So I set a goal, and I figured out my first action step was to go and audition. And I went. And it scared me to death. I went in there, and they had me, handed me a script. I had to read through it. I had to memorize some things and try to spout them back off. They wanted to see how quickly we could get what's called off book. Then they gave me a scene with some other people that didn't know what they were doing. And they gave us a few minutes and gave us what's called some blocking, which is your movement. It's go over here and keep yourself open to the stage and all this stuff. And they left and let us, fumble through it together, and came back, and we had to act it out. And then this one I really didn't see coming. They sent me downstairs to the basement, and I went in this room, and somebody said, okay, I want you to do these dance steps. And they showed me some dance steps, and I'm here, 40-something-year-old guy with a bunch of little kids auditioning for Annie, fumbling through these dance steps. And the whole time they've got like a clipboard, and, they're making notes and faces. It's like, and I'm making, I'm making faces. I'm going, I'm worried what they're writing down. Well, I landed my first role. And I got the cast list. When it came out, I found that they had put me in as Drake. Like, I didn't even know who Drake was. Does anybody know who Drake is in Annie? Well, if you don't know, Drake was the head butler. And I got to run around and say things like, will you be wanting a Bentley or a Duesenberg, sir? And yes, sir, excellent choice, sir. And then scuttling off stage. I'll show you a picture real quick of me in that very first role. This is a dream coming true. I want you to see the grin on my face is why I want you to see this. Hang on, let me share my screen. Okay, you should be able to see it here in just a second. I hope everybody can see that. But there I am. Look at that grin on my face as I stand here with all these lovely ladies. And the cool thing was, I also actually had two roles. Let me show you this other guy here. I was a drunk in Hooverville, and I staggered around and was singing drunken lines. So that was my glorious advent to the stage. But here's what happened. As soon as I got my role, then once I had set that goal and I auditioned, the director set up a practice schedule. And what I had to do then was I needed a system for taking action. I'm just going to put system-action. I needed a system for how I was consistently going to take action on that goal. Now, for me, it was a director who was, let me go back to me. I'll stop sharing. I'll come back there in a second. For me, it was a director was doing that for me, which was awesome. He was setting up practice times. He was setting up rehearsals with different people at different times, and he coordinated all of that, and I didn't have to worry about it. Well, here's the problem. In our daily lives, when we get clear on our priorities and we have our goals, we are the directors, all right? We have to have things that give us direction, and we have to be the director of our daily lives, making sure that we take daily action stepping forward. So for me, it became, showing up at practice. Remember, my goal wasn't just to get in a play. So let me share the other exciting part of this. I didn't stop there. I worked hard, got myself through that production, and then a few months later, out of the blue, the director called me and he said, John, we're going to be doing a Christmas Carol, and I want you to be, take a guess, Scrooge. And here I am again. I want you to see the happy face I've got, because this is what it looks like when you hit a goal. Got a couple pictures. First off, this is me being menacing and threatening with Bob Cratchit, but this is me right after, moments after I've taken a bow at the final curtain, and look at that face. Don't look at the mutton chops. That made my wife make a face, not the face I'm making, but look at that face. Absolute sheer joy. And it all started with setting that as a priority, saying, I'm going to be in a play. Let me stop sharing again. I'm going to be in a play no matter what. I'm going to put that first, and other things are going to have to work around it. Other things are going to have to happen after that. Then I set a very clear goal to live into this priority of wanting to act, of wanting to be a part of one of those troops. And then I had a system for taking action moving forward. The thrill of reaching that thing that you want to do that time seems like an obstacle for is, there aren't words for it. It's just this raw, amazing, incredible joy. And that's totally possible if we just make sure we get these three things in place. And see, I want you to see how if there's a gap, this whole thing can fall apart and result in a really painful lifestyle. I mentioned that what happens if we're missing priorities, but if we don't have goals, or if the goals we have are not connected to our priorities, I see this a lot of times. People will have something they're working on, they have something their life's focused around, but it's not connected to their priorities, and it's drudgery to them. I can't tell you how many, perfect example, I can't tell you how many people I have seen go through school and they commit into a 4-year program, and they get 3 years into that program and they realize, this is really not who I am and what I want to do. And rather than changing the goal, they stick with the goal. And the goal now, though, is detached. There's a gap between it and their priorities. And it takes them forever to get through. And it's painful, and it makes them weary. That's what happens when we're sticking with a goal that doesn't connect to our priorities. I've seen people not have this system in place or have it slightly out of alignment from their goals. I actually experienced that this week. I have a wonderful system. I follow the 7-Minute Life Daily Planner. I use it, and it works, provided these other things are in place. I noticed something. I'm in a mastermind group on Mondays, and a couple people in this call are here, and I was just talking, like I see Angela Johnson, Tisdale, she's one of my mastermind group people. I was explaining to them, I was telling them, I said, you know what? I got to the end of last week, and I got a lot of stuff done. And I was very productive, but I didn't touch my goals. See, these things, it's not a matter of just having them. They have to be connected to one another properly. So this week, as we speak, I'm making an adjustment. I'm moving this gear over so it meshes with my goals. I'm taking the tools I used to be very productive last week, but I've said at the beginning of every day this week, I will read and review every goal I have before I put my action steps down for the day, because there was a gap and it was missing. And I've already made more progress, and it's Tuesday, than I did all last week, just because I aligned my system properly. I had a system, but I didn't have it aligned. So as you look at this, I'm wondering, I want you to think about the things you're doing. Are you missing any of these? Are you missing your priorities, your purpose? Are you missing your goal? Do you have or do you not have a system? Most importantly, are they connected together? Do your goals properly represent your priorities and purpose? The work that you're doing, is it the work that will move you toward your goals? The work that you're doing, does it represent your purpose and priority? If there is a gap anywhere in here, if one thing is out of sync in the machine, it will not run, or it will run along very clinky clunky. Okay, technical time management term there, I know. Clinky clunky, all right? But that's what will happen. I've experienced this before where I had all the parts, but I didn't have them put together right. For those of you who know me, I've got a 1964 Volkswagen Beetle. Looks just like Herbie the Love Bug. And one day I decided I'll tune up the engine. And I went out there and, man, I did everything. That was my first mistake. I reset the valves. I checked the points in it. I checked the timing on it. Gosh, what else? I replaced the spark plugs. I mean, I did an overhaul on that engine, tuning it. That was amazing. I got in the car and it would barely run. I was like, what have I done to my car? It's jerking and halty and spinning and hiccuping. And I'm like, this is crazy. And I can't figure out what's going on. I barely make it to where I've got to go. I get in and I come back out and I'm like, I got to find out what's wrong. And I pop the hood, which is in the back, and I'm poking around in there, and I find out that I failed to put a spark plug wire back in place, and I was running on 3 of 4 cylinders. Well, folks, that's what happens when something like this, you got all the parts, but you don't have them connected together. And you're gonna run along at this herky-jerky space, or it's just gonna die, and it ain't gonna go anywhere. And unfortunately, we can laugh about that and talk about it in these terms, but when we talk about it falling apart, there are very real consequences in your lives. It means you don't get things done at work, and you are stressed and you're in trouble and or lose a job. It means you fail to spend time with your daughter the way I was failing to spend time with my daughter. It means that your marriage begins to become strained or stressed or fall apart, or your health collapses on you, or you wind up in depression. So I can laugh and joke about that as parts of an engine missing, but it's not a laughing matter if this is the reality that you're living in, of these things missing or not meshing together. Now I want to check my notes real quick and make sure I haven't missed anything, and I want to kind of summarize and review here. Yeah, I think I hit everything. I will say this, you know what? Once you start making time for your priorities, I want to add one more thing to this. You actually end up resetting the bar of your life so that it becomes easier to make time for those same priorities. In other words, once you move the bar and you push the priority up in place and you create a pattern around that, it doesn't have to stop with meeting your goal. It becomes easy, really easy to stack other goals on there. I'm going to share my screen one more time because my story did not stop with being in A Christmas Carol. That's me in A Christmas Carol. Let me show you a couple others. This is me with my wife, my beautiful wife, Susan, getting to be King Arthur in a production of Camelot. It was so fun. It was amazing, amazing experience. This is me getting to be Bert Healy in a different production of Annie. I came a long way in that one. This is me beardless too. You ain't gonna see that in a long time. And I'll just show you, I'll show you one more here. I'll show you two more and then we'll jump back, wrap this up. That's getting to be, that's a non-dress rehearsal where I was the candy man in Willy Wonka. And I got to do that play with my son and my daughter. And I think that's about it. Oh, and one last thing, that little girl whose hand I held and she said, "Daddy, do you work here?" That's her fast forward. And that's how we look together 90% of the time. Look at the smiles on our faces. We have a fantastic relationship today because I got these things in the right order, connected them together, and live by them now. I spend time on the phone with her probably at least every other day, if not more than that. She's working in a job in ministry while going to school. She's doing youth and children's ministry, and she calls me up all the time wanting advice or sharing a story about something that happened. And it's so cool to be a part of her life. I spent this weekend shopping for wedding venues for her coming up in the fall, and I'm so blessed that I have that awesome, awesome relationship. And I wouldn't have had that relationship. That wouldn't be my story if I had not tackled these three core elements. So once again, you've got to be clear on your purpose and priorities. And it's not a priority until you start putting it in place ahead of everything else and making other things work around it. If you're calling it a priority, but you're working on it in the margins of time left over after everything else, that's not a priority. It becomes a priority when you put it first. Clear goals. Goals give you direction. They are what show you the destination for making this thing concrete. A priority without a goal is just a good intention that's never going to materialize. It will never happen until you say, hey, this is what I'm going to do about it, and this is where I'm going to be 2 months from now, 3 months from now, a year from now. You have to have that. And last but not least, once you know where you're going, you need a roadmap and like a vehicle to get there in, and that's your daily system of action. How are you going to attend to that goal day after day after day and keep taking steps forward? Well, I started with asking you what would you do if time was not an obstacle for you? I'm serious about that question. This series, for the duration of it, we are going to have a private Facebook group. We've put that together. If you go to Facebook and you search for the 7-Minute Community, you'll find it. Ask to join. We'll bring you in there. I'm also going to be sending email out about it. You should have links in the replay for this. That 7-Minute Life Community on Facebook. I want you to join it. And when you join it, here's what I'd like you to do today. I would like you to share 2 things. One, I want you to share what you would do if time was not an obstacle. And dream big. Man, I was a 40-something guy, had never been on stage, who got a lead in a youth theater, okay? Lots can happen. So dream big and let us know what that is. And then the other thing I want you to share is I would like to know which one of these is the most problematic for you. Which one of these is your weak link? It might be a connection between 2, or it might be one of these is missing. But I'd like to know, because we really want to help you through this series, identify your trouble spots. Let us know in the Facebook group which one of these is a missing link for you. And I'll close with this. This series is going to be enough for many of you. In about a month, we're going to open up a new mastermind group. We've done master classes in the past. We're kind of shifting the focus a little bit, because what we found is that the people who met together and processed together in what we call a round table, those were the ones who had results that just shot through the roof. And we're putting this mastermind group together. There's an early bird pricing that we already have. You can go find out about that at a link below this video, or for those of you who happen to be on this while it's going live, I will put that in the comments in just a moment. But if you want to register for that mastermind group, you don't even have to think about it. You need it now. Go ahead and do that. I will say this about the mastermind group. The mastermind group, as opposed to attending webinars and having the resources, gives you this edge. It gives you the edge of accountability, because it is a very different thing to know you're supposed to come up with your purpose and priorities. It's a whole nother thing to be in a group and to be sharing those with one another. In other words, we help you get the work done that you need to do. And you have people that you tell them what you're going to be doing. It lasts 7 weeks. It gives you some time to get these things in place and figure out where it's hinky. But also, we do face-to-face interaction. It's not like this where we're throwing information out there, but we meet and we round table together. It's face-to-face interaction, and we're able to then dig down in, and oftentimes we can see what you can't. You need an outside perspective. If it's not working for you and you're going it alone, get some help, get in a mastermind group. So anyways, click that link below this video or on this page if you want to go ahead and take advantage of that early bird pricing. And I look forward to seeing you in our next video. In that video, I'm going to show you how to fine-tune this middle gear, because we're going to look at 7 cringeworthy mistakes people make when they're making their goals. If you set goals but you're not getting goals, you're not making it to the end of them, there's probably one of the 7 things I'm going to cover that you're missing. Little of it will be conventional wisdom, but I'm going to share with you some things I've never seen anybody else teach about goal setting. So I hope you will be there, and looking forward to that next Thursday at 11 a.m. All right, well, take care now, and I'm going to switch to those folks who are watching this live and answer questions that they have. Look forward to seeing you in the next video. Okay, let me jump into the chat here. I hope I stopped sharing. Allyson, can you hear me fine?
Yes, I can hear you fine and see you.
All right, great. Let me look through the comments. Oh, there's a lot of comments. Looks like mostly people were helping somebody with a sound issue. I'll start with asking, well, I do want to know whatever questions you have, but does this resonate for you? I want to know, folks, do you see and understand how these 3 things are critical? You cannot be missing one, and even if you have them, you have to properly align them together. And I would like to know, what would you do if time was an obstacle? Which one of these is the hardest one for you? Because let's speak to that. If you know which one of these is hardest for you, we can take a few minutes because we've got time. We've got plenty of time to do that. I want to hear back from you. Okay, let me give you, while I'm waiting for questions, I'm going to give you the links, okay? There's several different links that you could use, and I will grab them. And while I do that, Allyson, do you want to make any observations? Don't have to, but if you want to while I'm grabbing that, that would be awesome.
Yes, you have to give me permission to start my video.
Okay, let me do that. Got to find where that is.
Actually, I probably can do that as well.
I'm not sure where I swap you over. That's sorry, okay, folks.
Okay, I think I've...
You got it?
Yeah.
Can you all see Allyson now?
Well, not just yet. Hang on one second. Now okay, they should be able to see me. I want to make sure that they can see me now. John, we've been in these classes for a long time, and so I would just like people to comment. John and I have very different teaching styles, and I think that's what's going to make these ongoing webinars so good, is that when John and I work together, I'm much more of the here's the boom, 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 and John is much more of the here's what matters, here's how you can implement it. But John, what I've heard today is very different. We talk a lot. I see you teach. So I'm very appreciative that you sat down and really put a lot of thought into something that I don't think the people that have been on these webinars have heard before. Yes, John is a storyteller. And John, I think you bring this material to life. And that's what this mastermind class is going to be, or mastermind group. I think we all hear things differently. And, people look at the daily planner and they think they have to use this tool, John.
Right.
I think it's really as much about the tool as it is about making choices of who you want to be in life. And what you've talked about today is a great, and I've not heard this before, so I'm sure other people haven't heard it. I think what makes the mastermind so powerful is that we have content, but the content leads to a lifestyle. And I think where I am, I mean, I'm 57 and a half or 57 and 3/4. I'm closing in on 60. And yes, this information of how I run my life, the systems, the time management is important, but I like to say it's important so that, and I think that's what you were talking about today. It's important to me so that, you know, much past middle age, I can live a life with meaning. I can reach out to other people and try to make their lives better. I can share those friendships, you know, these parts that we're doing with where we are. It's not just supposed to be outward. I think that we're realizing that community is way more important than just checking something off your 5 before 11 list. So we're getting, especially with the closed Facebook private group, these mastermind groups that we're doing, it's going to be much more interactive, and it's going to be interactive again so that, and I think that's what makes the 7-minute life so different, is that I don't think it's a calendar. I don't think it's, you know, a system that you do just because you want to get more done, John, and I'm about to turn this back over to you. I think it's all of these things: prioritizing and sequencing your daily tasks, having goals that lead you to a specific finish line, and having that system in place, which is what we do. But I think what you've done today is you've given us that 50,000-foot overview of why time management and priorities and goals are so important. I just want to say thank you for that. And I'm sure other people want to say thank you too. John, and you and I, you know, we teach very different styles, but today was very meaningful to me. And so I'd love people to comment on why this interaction is important. And John, I'd like you to comment on how the 7-minute life is evolving into more than a one-way street, but also a two-way, because we certainly don't have all the answers, but into a two-way conversation. So John, I'm going to let you answer the questions and turn it back over, and I'm going to stop my video so that people can see you full screen.